Sama dude, SaiyanSalamander here, and welcome to the latest installment of my Fire Emblem Heroes Re-Finery series. If you haven't seen any of the other videos in the series before, then let me give you a quick rundown on how it works. Basically, I look at Fire Emblem characters who've already received a Refine before in the past that I think could use a bit of an upgrade, and then either change or supercharge the way their preferred weapon and Refine works. I'm pretty terrible at explaining things half the time though, so maybe it'll just be easier if I start talking about the first hero's Refine instead of explaining things further. So with that, let's jump into the first hero. Over the last two videos, I've been making my way through the Askr trio and talking about their refines and how I changed them. So of course in this video, I'm going to finally complete the trio by talking about the commander of the Order of Heroes, Anna. Like I said with the other two Askr trio members, I feel like these units really need to be good considering that they're the main characters and they're often free-to-play players' only option in arena or ether raids if they don't have any of the new units or other rotational units trained up. Anna in particular is really weak with her stat line. She has a really good speed, especially for a Gen 1 unit, and workable res and HP, but her attack and defense are awful, and she definitely needs a lot of support in order to make these stats work. On top of that, her preferred weapon and refine really aren't good. Most people just use other normal weapons with better effects instead. In fact, there's no real reason to use Anna unless you like the character, which is really sad. All the weapon does is allow Anna to teleport adjacent to allies, which is a handy ability, but definitely not one that should take up the base effect and refine effect. The effect just gets better depending on her HP. When she's above 50% HP, she can only teleport to allies within 2 spaces. However, below 50% HP, she can teleport to any ally on the map. So for a new refine, I'm going to keep the general idea, but kick things up a notch. Now, Anna can't teleport at full HP anymore to allies within 2 spaces. However, as long as she's below 100% HP, she can teleport to any ally on the map as her base weapon effect, which is really good since now she has space for a brand spanking new refine. I also gave her an accelerated special cooldown -1 as well as a +3 defense in order to patch up the stat a bit. I considered +3 attack, but I think that defense can actually match her resistance with +3 increase and a boon too. For Anna's refine, I decided to give her Spendthrift for those effects, boosting her attack by 7 and lowering the enemy's attack by 7. Though since this is a legendary Spendthrift effect, I took away the special cooldown penalty that the original weapon has. We all know how much Anna loves money, so I felt like it was a really fitting effect for her. As well as that her biggest problems lie with her attack and her defense, so the Spendthrift effect is a real big asset to her. Overall, Anna's now an incredibly speedy unit, capable of teleporting everywhere and even has a brand new refine effect that really helps fix her weaknesses, and even suits her character a lot more too. The next unit I'm going to be talking about definitely has the best weapon on this list in my opinion, and she's also the only unit in this refinery video that I've actually managed to +10 so far as of the making of this video. The next unit I'm going to be talking about is the Highborn Flyer, Claire. Her weapon Romfeya is genuinely pretty good for a Gen 1 unit. It's effective against cavalry and armoured units, and with her refine she gains Flashing Blade 3, a skill that for some reason flyers usually don't have access to. I've never got why, especially when they already have access to Heavy Blade 3, so even if it takes something unique away from Claire and Sheeta, I'm kinda hoping that one day they patch it, so all flyers have access to it, even though I'm fairly sure they never will. To start things off, let's buff the base weapon a bit, since I think that's where most of the problems lie. While being effective against cavalry and armoured weapons is a great effect, I think it needs a bit more than that. Units like Pikaah have that effect, a stat bonus, and another skill all on top of it, and that's all before having a refine too. So I gave Claire +3 speed in order to make it easier to activate her refine effect. I also gave her speed defense rain 3 in order to make it even easier for her to activate her refine effect and also increase her damage output too, by lowering the enemy's defense and making it more likely for Claire to double. As for refine effect, all I did was upgrade Flashing Blade 3 into Flashing Blade 4. It isn't much of an improvement, but her refine's already really good, so this was just a little added bonus just to buff up Claire a tad bit more. Honestly, I think this next character is probably on par with Ephraim for one of the worst refines we've ever got. And the wielder of that weapon I'm talking about is the wildcard Takumi from Fire Emblem Fates. Before his refine, all Takumi's weapon did was allow him to pass through enemies. But when his refine came around, he can now pass through any terrain and teleport to allies within 2 spaces, as long as his HP is equal to or above 50%. With his new weapon though, I combined the old base effect with the new one, so he can pass through enemies and pass through terrain that would usually slow him down. It also grants him +3 speed and is effective against flyers too. Finally for his refine, it still allows him to teleport to allies within 2 spaces, however it also gives him a vantage effect too. So if Takumi's attacked, he can attack first as long as he has high enough HP at the start of combat. Usually his HP threshold would be equal to or above 50%, but I changed that to 25%, so it's easier for him to activate all of his weapons effects, making him a lot more effective of a unit overall, since he can use his abilities a lot more often. It may still not be the best Refine out there, but I think it's a great improvement from what it used to have, and it makes him an interestingly unique unit that can pass through terrain, enemies, and even teleport to allies as long as they're close by. And the new Vantage effect synergizes well with Close Counter, which comes in his base kit. And considering how he's the original Close Counter unit, I wanted to give him a skill to combo well with it, so that people would still run it in his A slot, instead of replacing it with another skill. So this was actually a super last minute addition to this Refinery video, as I had actually already came up with a new weapon effect for a different character that I guess I'm going to talk about in another video now. However, after seeing Faith's new Refine and how it completely and utterly outclasses Robin's Refine, I had to look into it and see what I could do. As male Robin and female Robin both have the same weapon, Refine, and even stats for that matter, I figured I'd talk about them both here. Their old Refine granted triangle advantage against colourless foes, and inflicted weapon triangle disadvantage on those foes too. As for the Refine, it's a Spectrum Tactics 2 skill, granting +4 to all ally stats as long as there are only 1 or 2 units of that movement type on a team. With Faith's weapon though, she can grant +5 to all stats and to all allies within 2 spaces without any special condition, so Robin definitely needs a huge buff, otherwise there's a trillion different mages with way better weapons. For Robin's new Refine though, I still kept the Spectrum Tactic effect since, as a tactician, I've always suited Robin a lot. I increased the range of the effect from 2 spaces to 3 spaces, and buff the effect so they grant +6 to all stats instead of +4, and even grants a bonus to themselves too. I also gave Robin something unique by allowing the player to choose any stat to increase by 3 or 5 depending on if you choose HP stat, in order to reference how Robin is the player character in Awakening, and you can choose their Boon and Bane. This means you can effectively choose how you build Robin even more, because you can choose how to build them by choosing which stat to distribute to them alongside their weapon Refine effect. As for the base weapon, I kept the Raven Tome effect and gave Robin a new skill with the same tactic activation condition, so it works as long as there's only 2 or less allies of the same movement type on your team. If this condition is met, Robin can counterattack regardless of the foe's range, and even gains +1 special cooldown per foe's attack. I also buffed the tactic activation condition, so you can even use Robin in modes like Rival Domains or Grand Conquests. Now as long as no more than 50% of the team or less is the same unit type, then the effect will still activate in these game modes, so you don't need to worry about the Robin's effect effectively being useless during these times. Overall, this really buffs up Robin to be the master of tactics that they should be, and even though Robin's somewhat limited on how you build a team around them, I think the way of supercharge their weapon more than makes up for it. Moving on to the final unit is actually one that was requested in my first weapon Refinery video, so if you have any suggestions of characters you want to see me come up with a new Refine for, then definitely post them in the comments section, and maybe I'll talk about them in a future Refinery video. So the final character I'll be talking about in this video is the Lady of the Plains, one of the 3 lords from Blazing Blade, Lynn. At first she wasn't on my radar since I thought her weapon was pretty good. However, after looking at it more, I do think it could use a few changes, and I think I've got just the idea on how to improve her, and really give her weapon a really good push in the right direction. Her old Refine was a combination of Brash Assault and Desperation, which was an insane combo within a weapon at first, but after fighter skills started coming into play and power creep got more rampant, it started to lose its edge. For Lynn's base effect, I decided to add +3 speed and accelerate her special cooldown -1. Now it's easier to activate her special, and since speed's her best stat, I figured I'd make it even more of a speed demon with the added boost. I also upgraded the Desperation effect into a Daring Fighter effect, so as well as having a Desperation effect, Lynn can now nullify foes' effects that prevent Lynn from having a follow-up attack. But that's not all, I also upgraded Brash Assault too, so not only does Lynn have a slightly higher HP threshold for activation with 80% or less compared to 75% or less, Lynn also gains +1 special cooldown when attacking too. This frees up Lynn's A slot and S slot skill, so she no longer has to run Flashing Blade, and can use a different skill like Life and Death, Fury, or Swift Sparrow. It really makes her into a monster of a unit, and she should be after the insane refine that Eliwood got. Lynn was originally one of the best sword units in the game, and I think this refine really allows her to steal that spot back so she can compete with even the latest power grip sword units to enter the game. And with that, I think that's just about everything for this video, so I hope you enjoyed it, my dudes. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe to see more, and check out the other Fire Emblem content I do on the channel. I also do a bunch more gaming and anime content here on YouTube and over on Twitch, which will be linked in the description below, in case you want to check out any of my playthroughs live. That's all for now, so until next time, my dudes, bye.